Hey there, MRA, my real Africanist. This is your girl, Maria Juke, the real Africanist, and welcome to my channel. If you have been here before, thank you for coming back. And if this is your first time here, of course, I appreciate you watching. On this channel, I talk about African history, the field of African studies, and current African affairs, right? So today I wanted to talk about an article that I was reading online last night, right? And the reason why I'm laughing is because I always say that because I'm always reading and I'm always online, right? But I have to do that so I can keep up on current events and continue to bring you the commentary about African history and affairs that you are interested in, right? So, this article was about two Navy ships that were being commissioned in Ghana, right? So, these two Navy ships were being commissioned by the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, along with four other ships. But what makes these Navy vessels so different from the other ones was that these particular vessels were donated by the United States of America, right? So, in order to commemorate this commissioning, the U.S. ambassador to Ghana was present, and her name is Virginia Palmer, I believe, right? So, it, I guess that seems like that would be a good thing, right? And I don't mean to be cynical, and I don't mean to always be critical of African leaders. As a matter of fact, I always want to highlight the positive of what's going on in Africa. However, when it comes to situations like this, when you have these relationships between these Western powers and Africa, they always concern me a bit, right? And I am skeptical. And the reason why I am skeptical is because of the past history, right? And for me, history is a great indicator of what future behavior will be, right? So, another thing that bothered me was when Ambassador Palmer gave her remarks, right, during the ceremony. So when President Akufo-Addo, when he gave his remarks, right, they were just pretty general. He just wanted to thank the United States for, donating the boats. He also wanted to just say that, the boats will go a long way in supporting Ghana to continue to improve security in the West African region and in the maritime industry, right? And so something very basic like that. But when it was time for Ambassador Palmer to give her comments, like always, she was talking in this tone that I just really despise, right? And it's this whole paternalistic type of language that these Western powers use when it comes to dealing with African countries, right? It's as if they always talk to African leaders as if they are children, right? They seem to always talk down to them, right? With this kind of air of superiority or this air of, we need to help poor little Africa because, where would they be? What would they do without us? They would just, self-destruct and kind of, do themselves in, right? I think I mentioned this. I know I mentioned this one time before, when U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was in Rwanda, right? And so, I remember when after he left, President Paul Kagame, he gave his, he sent out a tweet, right? And so his tweet was basically something very general, like, Rwanda welcomes the U.S., Secretary of State Blinken. We had a very productive meeting, and we made some progress in our conversation on how to basically improve security within the region, right? However, when Secretary of State Blinken, when he tweeted his comments out, it was like totally different, right? It was kind of like, basically, again, thank President Kagame for hosting them, and we talked about terrorism in the region, and basically how we can improve security. But then he talked about improving democracy and human rights violations, and how we and we talked about the improper detainment of Paul Rusabanga, right? And so if you know Paul Rusabanga, he's the guy from the movie Hotel Rwanda was about, right? But to come to find out, that whole thing was also told from a Western perspective, and the details of the movie may not have been true, right? They could be, and then they could not have been, right? But there is a debate about that. However, back to what I was saying. So when the U.S. ambassador to Ghana, when she got up to speak, it was that same kind of tone. It was, she kept talking about, yes, we need to improve security in the maritime sector, and, in the Gulf of Guinea, and she kept talking about, improving the sovereignty of Ghana, and the prosperity of Ghana, and not only if we stop this illegal fishing by these international players, we can do this, we can improve this, and again, we can prosper Ghana. So in the stretch of about I guess 2-minute comments, she said prospering Ghana about 4 or 5 times. She talked about illegal fishing 4 or 5 times. She kept on talking about the Gulf of Guinea, security in the Gulf of Guinea, right? And again, I'm quite sure that, there is a need to secure waters, right? There's always need to secure waters, right? And I don't want to take anything away from President Ado and his Navy personnel, right, for taking the steps to retool their Navy and to improve security in the maritime sector, right? But again, like when he made his comments, he said nothing about that, right? He just kind of basically thanked them, and talked about how they were retooling and the advancements that they made. But when she talked about it, she just continues to talk about, the security, our need to. So basically, this tone of voice where we just need to poor Ghana, that they have all of this drama and all of this insecurity going on, and which is not necessarily true. There's some truth that there's some insecurity, but Ghana, for the most part, is a very secure country, and and a very a balanced country, right? And so, like I said, when she talks, she makes it seem like it's just out of control, and that without them, you know, that these African countries, they don't have a chance, right? Also that they don't have any moral values, that just basically that kind of talk, again, that I really despise, right? So she also kept continued to kind of place Ghana on this pedestal, right? Kept talking about again, how Ghana is the number one leader in security in that region when it comes to the maritime sector and other things like that, right? And again, not to take anything away from Ghana. However, I just think that that is some really, really dangerous rhetoric to be spreading right now, especially with everything that's going on in West Africa, right? Just to continue to, like I say, put Ghana on a pedestal and kind of single Ghana out. I think that that's really will cause divisiveness in that area, right, and cause animosity between these West African countries, right? And from my perspective, I think that is the, strategic plan, right? That's what it has always been, and I think that's what it continues to be, right? So, I know, again, some people might say, well, you're just kind of nitpicking. No, when it comes to, again, the relationships between West African countries and African countries, you have to go deeper. That's why I always say at the end of my talks, when you're researching Africa, always go deeper, because there is more to the story, because there's always more to the story, right? And I'm afraid that if when these Western countries donate something, or when they continue to give you aid, in the article, it talked about training of the Navy personnel, and how I guess the United States is also offering training to Ghana's Navy personnel, as well as, financial assistance. And to me, that is a problem, because so many African leaders are always talking about being independent, being sovereign, being respected, getting away from the dependency on these Western powers, but in this case of the United States. But you continue to take aid from these countries and these different Western organizations, and you continue to depend on them to, like I say, to train your military personnel, and to accept donations like these Navy ships. So how are you ever going to be independent of an entity if you continue to take aid from them and they continue to train your personnel, right? I know, believe me, I'm not naive, and I know that the U.S. has one of the best militaries in the world, if not the best, right? And there's a lot of other countries who send their military personnel to the U.S. to be trained. However, as long as these African countries have been sending their people to the United States and to these other Western countries to be trained, it seems as if they would be trained enough by now to take on that a job for themselves, right? When do you cut the ties and quit going to these different countries, to render this type of service, right? Because again, they know everything you do, they understand what type of money you have because they gave it to you. They know what your military personnel knows because they trained you, right? It's like in that Malcolm X movie, I remember the one that Spike Lee made, and Malcolm said when the government organizations, the CIA, and was out to kill him, right? And so they had blown up his house and firebombed his house and all that, right? And so when he was talking to the media, he said, "I'm going to quit just saying that this is the Nation of Islam, right? That are doing these things, because I know." What they are capable of doing because I trained them, right? So basically he's saying someone else is involved because they couldn't do all of this by themselves, because I know what they did because I trained them. And that's how I feel when it comes to African countries depending on these Western powers to, train them and to continue to finance their military efforts and other things, right? However, when I was doing some research for, as I was doing more research about this whole situation with the U.S. and the boats and all of this, I ran across an article, right? And I believe that this is strategically tied to these military boats, right? As a matter of fact, I ran across two articles. One article was talking about the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, how they were basically negotiating to establish contracts for metals in different African countries, right? And so there was three countries that they were negotiating with, and probably the negotiations are final, right? So these three countries were Namibia, the Democratic of the Congo, and also Guinea, right? And so I found that rather strange that at this time, right, when the at this time when the U.S. is so interested in or involved in providing these ships for these Navy vessels, right, to protect the Gulf of Guinea. Because like I said, the ambassador kept on talking about the Gulf of Guinea, protection for the Gulf of Guinea, right, and the surrounding waters. So I found that rather interesting because all of those three countries border the Gulf of Guinea, right? Like I said, I don't know the official parameters of what is considered the Gulf of Guinea, but the Gulf of Guinea is right on that arc. Like you see my ring here, it's right on this arc here, right? And so, you have, like I say, Namibia, which is down south a little bit, but then you have Guinea, which is over here on the west coast, and you have the Democratic of Congo right in this area, okay? This ring came in handy. But I don't go without it, right? I wear it every day. But again, I found that was ironic, right? That now the U.S. is negotiating or have finished negotiating for securing mining minerals from these three countries. They talked about cobalt, uranium, other very important minerals that are needed for electronic car batteries, for laptops, for smartphones, And then the article went on to talk about how the United States was in a race against China to acquire these minerals, right? This article was published in the Wall Street Journal, but I was reading it on Reuters' site, right? Reuters' website. That they share all of this information, right? And so I'll put that link to both of these articles about the Navy vessels, as well as this article about the metals, and plus this other article that I also found, right, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. So again, I find that is very problematic. So here you have these agreements for the Saudi Arabians to mine these different minerals, and then you have the U.S. In agreement where they are able to purchase so much percentage of these different minerals, right? And this, for me, is a long pattern of how the United States kind of muddies the water when it comes to their direct involvement in the neo-colonialist practices in Africa, right? They always seem to go through some of their Middle Eastern partners or their European partners. So again, it's kind of like that indirect rule that I talked about on my last couple videos, that Britain is masters at, right? They get what they need out of Africa, but their name is not directly attached to it because they go through someone else, right? And like I said, I think this is very problematic because that's how it's always been all throughout history, right? It's always these Western powers, including the U.S., against these Asian powers, right? Whether they're or southern Asian countries like India, whether it's China, whether it's the Arab countries in the so-called Middle East, regardless, it's always these two entities that are at it with each other, or or working together to suppress Africa or to exploit Africa. And then Africa again is always in the middle, right? This is how it has been done all throughout history, and for me, this is how it continues to be done, right? So when I hear her continuing to talk about the Gulf of Guinea protection for the water, and talking about these internationals, again, players who are doing illegal fishing in these waters. When she's talking about international, we know who she's talking about. It's no secret that she's talking about China, which is again another Asian power. And so then but Africa continues to find herself in the middle, right? And always, is the one that, gets exploited, or get the pennies that are left over from these two powers, who exploit their resources and make all the money. So I just don't understand why African leaders continue to put themselves in these type of positions, right? Like I said, I understand that many African countries are in some very vulnerable positions, but you claim that you want sovereignty and you want liberation and you want freedom, but do you really? Maybe it's true that many of these leaders, just like all the other world leaders, are just really concerned with themselves and not concerned with the progress of their people, right? And if that's the case, we as the people really have to support one another and look out for ourselves, right? And that is kind of what's going on in West Africa now. That's why we have all of these coups, because these leaders continue to ignore the needs of the people while they continue to enrich themselves and enrich their coffers, right? Now, I'm not saying that President Addo is doing that in Ghana. That's not what I am saying, right? I don't know, but I do know that there is this pattern that continues. And again, these countries, Western countries, who claim to have Africa's best interests at heart, continue to get richer and richer, while the people in Africa continue to get poorer and poorer, right? And that is very, very unfortunate, and is very problematic, and it's not going to be able to continue, right? Like I said, that's why we see what we're seeing in these West African countries, right? How in the world, that's the situation in Niger, for instance. How in the world can, Burkina Faso, Mali, they all kicked France out. And then you have the president, the ex-president of Niger, Bazoum, then you welcome them into your country? You know, whose side are you on? You say that you want unity with your people. You say that Africa needs to work together in order to accomplish what they want to accomplish going forward. But then you do something like that. So it seems as if you are riding with the other side and you're not riding with your people. So basically, you kind of get what you get, right? I mean, nobody wants to see a coup d'etat. No one wants to see the government become unstable or for African leaders to be overthrown. But if you continue to do what you have always done, you're going to continue to get what you always have gotten. And again, that's why I am totally against, African countries continuing to accept what they call donations, from these Western countries who do not have Africa's interests in heart, right? At heart. Because if they had Africa's interests at heart, even with this situation with the metals, again, I find it ironic that all of a sudden now you're worried about this Gulf of Guinea, where you have Gabon that was just, there was a coup just in Gabon. You have Namibia, the Democratic of the Congo, all of now these countries that you are interested in getting these metals from, right? And again, from the article, this won't be the first agreement. These type of agreements already exist. But then you have the people in the Congo, again, who are some of the poorest people in terms of wealth, right? And material gain, some of the poorest people on the face of the continent, right? So why not only Western leaders, you can't just hold them at fault, but why would African leaders continue to do this? They talk about the problem that they're having with climate change. Look at what just happened in Morocco, the earthquake that was in Morocco. There was just a flood in, I think, the Congo. There's always flooding going on in East Africa and other parts of Africa. All throughout Africa, we have these catastrophic climate events. But then you continue to make these type of agreements with these Western countries to continue to mine African resources and deplete African soil when you know that they are responsible for most of the climate events. So you are responsible for that. And again, like I say, I just don't get it, but I guess just the way it is, but it's going to have to change. Too many African people have given their lives, have died fighting for liberation and for the empowerment of African people, and it is our time to shine. It is our time. And so if you continue to, these leaders, the word is, if you continue to do this, again, you're going to continue to get what you're getting, right? The article that I read was very similar to this thing in Ghana. You have the British vessel that just parked itself in the waters near Nigeria. Again, I guess in the Gulf of Guinea or somewhere around Nigeria. Another, now this was a British vessel, right? A British Navy vessel that supposedly is being used for the same thing. And again, if you read the articles, I'll put both of the links in there, well, all three of the links. If you read the article, the language is the same thing, right? So that goes to show you it's nothing but rhetoric. It's nothing but rhetoric. And I'm hoping that these European powers are not moving in to this area to, make an attempt to attack these other Western countries who, these ex-French colonial countries, right, who are just trying to take their countries back from French neo-colonialism and free their people from French oppression. I'm really hoping that this is not the case, but it's mighty strange that now you have the UK showing up with their Navy vessels, right, talking about maritime security, protecting the Gulf of Guinea. And then you have Ghana's also the U.S. showing up in Ghana talking about, protecting the waters, protecting the Gulf of Guinea. Right? But they're doing business, again, the U.S., and I'm quite sure the U.K. probably too, you're doing business with Guinea. But Guinea just had a coup. Guinea just had a coup 2 years ago. So if you were that interested in the safety of and the security of African people, then why are you doing business with Guinea? Why are you making deals for metals with Guinea? Because it's not about the security and safety of the people. Why are you doing business with Saudi Arabia when we just heard 2 weeks ago that they were shooting poor, innocent Ethiopian men, women, and children in their back when they were murdering them in cold blood because they were trying to cross over into the Middle East through on the border of Yemen. So if you care that much about African people, then why are you continuing to do business with these people who continue to exploit and murder African people? Because it's not about that. It's not about that. And, I hope that the African leaders will wake up and realize that these people don't care nothing about them. I don't know how they can't see this at this point. They don't want to see it, I guess. But how are you ever going to stand on your own if you continue to always depend on somebody else to do something for you? If you continue to take donations, if you continue to take aid, you taking aid again on the U.S. Embassy website for Ghana. You're taking aid, millions of dollars of aid for to help support good governance and support election. What did they say? Inclusivity. Or stability. Ghana is one of the most stable countries in Africa, and they have one of the most regulated electoral systems that there is. So why do we need millions from the U.S. for that? They need to be worried about their own electoral system here in this country. It's falling apart at the seams. All this stuff with Donald Trump, all this stuff with these Republicans against the Democrats, they at each other's throat any chance they get. All of this stuff with the African American voting rights being turned back, trying to be turned back, and all of the advances turned back. This is what they need to be worried about. All of these political figures going to jail, being accused of fraud. Why aren't they worried about their own people? Again, that just goes to show you it's not about their concern for Africa. It's about their concern for having influence in Africa. As soon as Africa decided to kind of go off on their own and do some things without the approval of these Western so-called overlords, right? It seems it's like soon as Ghana enacted the year of return, when they had millions and millions of African Americans to come back to the continent, right? Or when they start really talking up this African Continental Free Trade Agreement, then all of a sudden it seems like all heck broke loose. All of these conflicts in Africa that had kind of been at ease for a while, all of a sudden they start to blow up. And you're not going to tell me that didn't have anything to do with this interference by these outsiders. So anyway, I know I'm rambling and I can go on and on forever, but just tell me what you think about that. What do you think about of all of it? About these two naval ships that were donated to Ghana? What do you think about these minerals, right? These contracts for these minerals being mined in these countries that are on the coast of the Gulf of Guinea? What do you think about this UK Navy ship being positioned right around the waters of Nigeria? Right? Tell me what you think, okay? I am Maria Juve, the real Africanist, and I am signing off here. I bring you commentary on African history, the field of African studies, and current African affairs. If you got some value from my content, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and of course subscribe so that I can get those numbers up and continue to bring you information that you are interested in, right? So I will see you next time. Remember, fight the power. When you are researching Africa, always go deeper because there's always more to the story. Also, never be quiet in the face of wrongdoing, and also never forget the African ancestors. Peace, and talk to you soon.